The flames that lit up Tucker's barn on that Wyoming night weren't just consuming timber and hay, they were burning away the last of Eli Tucker's defenses against the woman he'd married sight unseen, out of duty, only to discover that Abigail Flynn possessed the kind of courage that could either save his soul or destroy his carefully guarded heart forever. At 34, Eli had built his life around debt and distance, honoring his promise to a dying friend while keeping his emotions locked away. Since his sister Mary's death had taught him that loving someone only led to loss. But Abigail's unexpected strength and fierce independence challenged every assumption he'd made about their arrangement and about himself. What began as a transaction to honor a dead man's final wish would ignite into the most transformative partnership either had ever experienced. Through fire and revelation, two guarded souls would discover that sometimes the most profound love stories begin with duty and evolve into something worth fighting for when the flames test everything they thought they knew about each other. Wyoming Territory, 1883. Cedar Ridge sat in the shadow of the Wind River Mountains like a collection of stubborn prayers, its buildings weathered by winds that never stopped and winters that tested even the strongest spirits. The territory was caught between progress and lawlessness, where railroad money created opportunities while land barons like Cyrus Vance used violence to eliminate competition for the most valuable grazing rights. This was frontier society, where marriages of convenience were common currency. Women's teaching positions were subject to moral scrutiny that men's business dealings never faced, and a man's word was expected to be worth more than legal contracts. Ranch life demanded partnerships that could survive isolation, financial pressure, and the kind of external threats that turned neighbors into enemies when resources grew scarce. In this harsh landscape, trust was a luxury, and survival often depended on choosing loyalty over personal comfort. Eli's retreat from emotional investment had begun 7 years earlier, when his sister Mary died, giving birth to her first child, the baby dying hours later, despite his desperate attempts to save them both. The double loss had shattered his faith in his ability to protect anyone he loved, transforming him from hopeful rancher into someone who measured success by his capacity to avoid situations that required caring more than he could afford to lose. His promise to marry Tom Brennan's intended bride had been debt payment rather than romantic gesture, a way to honor friendship without risking the kind of vulnerability that led to devastating loss. At 34, Eli had achieved the kind of professional success that made him valuable to ranch owners while keeping him personally isolated from relationships that might demand emotional investment he couldn't afford to make. His reputation as reliable foreman had earned Tom Brennan's trust and dying request, creating obligation that transcended personal preference to encompass moral duty. The marriage arrangement with Abigail had been intended as practical solution that would provide her with security while fulfilling his promise without requiring genuine intimacy that could recreate the vulnerability he'd experienced when Mary died. Beneath Eli's controlled exterior lay compassion that tragedy hadn't managed to completely destroy. Though grief had taught him to express kindness through actions rather than words, his greatest strength was his ability to recognize character, despite his reluctance to trust his own emotional responses to people who seemed worthy of deeper connection. His deepest vulnerability was the fear that caring about someone new would only create fresh opportunities for the kind of devastating loss that had nearly destroyed him when Mary died. The skills that made him successful as ranch foreman: patience, observation, protective instincts, also made him capable of recognizing when someone deserved the kind of loyalty he'd been afraid to offer. Abigail's unexpected competence and courage forced Eli to choose between the safety of treating their marriage as mere business arrangement and the dangerous possibility of genuine partnership that could heal or destroy what remained of his capacity for love. Her obvious intelligence and determination challenged his assumptions about mail-order brides, while awakening protective instincts he'd thought permanently buried with his sister. The real conflict lay not in external threats from Cyrus Vance, but in the internal battle between Eli's growing attraction to Abigail and his determination never to risk the kind of emotional investment that had left him shattered when Mary died. Their partnership would test whether duty could evolve into love when supported by mutual respect, shared danger, and the daily choice to build something together despite the forces arrayed against their right to succeed where others had failed. But their wedding night would prove to be only the beginning of discoveries that would challenge everything both Eli and Abigail believed about duty, desire, and the possibility that arrangements made from necessity could transform into partnerships worth fighting for. The moment Eli saw Abigail step down from the stagecoach in Cedar Ridge, every assumption he'd made about Tom Brennan's intended bride crumbled like poorly built foundations. This wasn't the desperate woman he'd expected to rescue from unfortunate circumstances. This was someone whose bearing spoke of education, determination, and the kind of inner strength that could either complement his own capabilities or challenge them in ways that made him distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Tucker," she said, her voice carrying Boston refinement tempered by something harder. "I assume you're here to fulfill the arrangement my correspondence with Tom Brennan established. I want to be clear from the beginning that I expect this marriage to be based on mutual respect and clearly defined expectations rather than romantic sentiment neither of us can afford." Her directness caught him off guard in ways he hadn't anticipated. The woman standing before him possessed intelligence that made their arrangement seem less like charity and more like negotiation between equals, forcing him to reconsider assumptions about what their partnership might require from both of them. "Tom spoke highly of your teaching abilities," Eli replied carefully, testing the boundaries of conversation that felt more like business discussion than courtship. The arrangement was his idea, but I'm prepared to honor his judgment about what would benefit everyone involved. The careful distance they maintained during their first conversation established patterns that would define their relationship while revealing depths neither had expected to discover in someone they'd been prepared to treat as convenient solution to practical problems. The wedding ceremony they arranged was conducted with the kind of business-like efficiency that both found preferable to romantic theater. Neither believed they could sustain authentically. Their exchange of vows emphasized partnership and mutual support rather than love and devotion, creating framework for coexistence that protected both from expectations that might prove impossible to fulfill. "I won't pretend affections I don't feel," Abigail said as they discussed living arrangements. but I will contribute everything I can to making this arrangement successful for both of us. I expect the same honesty and effort in return. The practical negotiations about household responsibilities, financial management, and personal boundaries revealed compatibility that surprised both of them while establishing foundation for partnership that honored their individual capabilities rather than forcing either into roles that denied their natural strengths. Eli's assignment of the ranch house's spare bedroom to Abigail, with clear understanding that their marriage would remain platonic unless both chose otherwise, demonstrated respect that impressed her while protecting him from pressures he wasn't prepared to handle. Her immediate assumption of household management duties, organizing supplies, planning meals, creating educational programs for local children, showed competence that went far beyond mere domestic skills to encompass business acumen. The routines they established during their first weeks together honored both their need for personal space and their growing recognition that their arrangement could provide benefits neither had anticipated when agreeing to honor Tom's dying request for their partnership. The domestic harmony that developed between them revealed both their individual loneliness and their unexpected compatibility, despite the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. Abigail's transformation of Eli's bachelor quarters into something approaching a genuine home proceeded with efficiency that impressed him while awakening protective instincts he'd been trying to suppress. Her teaching of local children, conducted in their kitchen with materials she'd brought from Boston, filled the house with sounds of learning and laughter that reminded Eli of what family life could offer when not shadowed by the kind of tragedy that had shaped his recent experience. Her obvious joy in sharing knowledge created atmosphere of purpose that made their arrangement feel meaningful rather than merely convenient. "You're not what Tom described," Eli admitted one evening as they shared a meal that Abigail had transformed from basic ingredients into something approaching restaurant quality. "He made you sound desperate. You seem capable." Her response revealed the strength that had enabled her to accept an arrangement most women would have found terrifying. Desperation and capability aren't mutually exclusive. I needed opportunity, and you provided it. But I didn't survive Boston society and family debt by being helpless or grateful beyond what circumstances actually warranted. But their carefully maintained boundaries would face their first real test when external threats forced them to choose between the safety of emotional distance and the partnership required to defend what they'd begun building together. The first challenge was navigating the growing attraction between them while maintaining the emotional boundaries that protected both from expectations their practical arrangement hadn't been designed to fulfill. Eli's awareness of Abigail's intelligence and competence competed with his determination never to risk the kind of emotional investment that had left him devastated when Mary died, while Abigail's recognition of his character and protective instincts conflicted with her need to maintain independence that would allow her to survive if their arrangement proved temporary. Their shared domestic routines, collaborative meal preparation, evening conversations about ranch management, comfortable silences that spoke of growing trust created intimacy that neither had anticipated when agreeing to honor Tom's request. Cyrus Vance's escalating harassment of their ranch operations forced both to acknowledge that their partnership involved dangers that went beyond personal comfort to encompass physical survival and economic security. His systematic campaign to drive them off valuable grazing land cutting fences, driving off cattle, intimidating neighboring ranchers who might support them, created external pressure that transformed their relationship from convenient arrangement into alliance, requiring genuine trust and coordination. The attacks on their property revealed both Eli's military experience and Abigail's courage under pressure, capabilities that enhanced their effectiveness as defensive team while creating shared experiences that deepened their emotional connection despite their intentions to maintain professional distance. The discovery of Tom Brennan's letter revealing his unrequited love for Abigail created complications that went beyond their original arrangement to encompass questions about the nature of their growing feelings for each other and whether their partnership was based on genuine compatibility or merely obligation to honor a dead man's romantic fantasies. The letter's revelation that Tom had hoped Eli would fall in love with Abigail, combined with evidence that their relationship was evolving exactly as Tom had planned, forced both to confront whether their attraction was authentic or manufactured through circumstances designed to produce predetermined outcome. Cyrus Vance's systematic campaign to claim their ranch land represented more than personal greed. It embodied territorial conflicts between established cattle barons and newcomers seeking to build independent operations through innovation rather than intimidation. His resources and political connections made him a formidable enemy whose harassment could escalate from economic pressure to deadly violence without legal consequences for anyone with sufficient wealth and influence. The winter weather that isolated their ranch from potential allies also created tactical advantages for attackers who could surround the property and wait for defenders to exhaust their supplies and ammunition. Vance's timing of his assault during the worst storm of the season demonstrated strategic thinking that made him more dangerous than random criminal. The territorial legal system's bias toward established interests meant that official protection was unlikely even if their evidence of criminal harassment was overwhelming. Vance's ability to frame their defensive measures as aggression against legitimate business interests created legal vulnerabilities that could result in their arrest rather than his prosecution. Most pressingly, the economic pressures created by Vance's sabotage threatened to make their ranch operation financially unsustainable, regardless of their personal relationship success, forcing them to risk everything on innovative strategies that could either secure their future or accelerate their destruction under mounting pressure. Both Eli and Abigail discovered capabilities they hadn't known they possessed while learning to function as genuine partnership that honored both their individual strengths and their collective determination to protect what they'd built together. Eli's evolution from emotionally guarded ranch foreman to protective husband required learning to balance his desire to shield Abigail from danger with respect for her proven ability to handle crisis situations. Abigail's transformation was equally profound. The displaced teacher, who'd accepted mail-order marriage as alternative to destitution, evolved into confident ranch partner whose business acumen, courage under fire, and strategic thinking made her invaluable ally in both domestic management and defensive planning. Her proposal to diversify their operation through horse breeding for military contracts, demonstrated vision that went beyond mere survival to encompass long-term prosperity. Their relationship deepened beyond convenience or mutual assistance into authentic collaboration, where each contributed unique strengths to their shared challenges. Eli's knowledge of ranch operations and territorial politics complemented Abigail's education and fresh perspectives on business development, creating partnership that enhanced both their individual capabilities. Most importantly, they both learned that love could indeed grow from duty when nurtured with respect, protected with courage, and defended with whatever violence became necessary to preserve what they'd chosen to build together. Intelligence gathered from neighboring ranchers revealed that Vance's campaign against their operation was part of broader strategy to consolidate control over water rights and railroad access throughout the region. His success in driving them off would encourage similar attacks on other independent ranchers while demonstrating that innovation and hard work couldn't compete with organized criminal violence. Reports from town suggested that territorial authorities were investigating complaints about the conflicts, but their bias toward maintaining business relationships with established interests made legal protection unlikely. Vance's political connections could frame their defensive measures as criminal aggression requiring federal intervention. Most ominously, the approaching spring cattle drive season would determine whether their ranch operation could survive financially while facing continued sabotage. Their plan to secure military contracts for horse breeding represented a desperate gamble that could either establish their economic independence or provide Vance with evidence of their failure to justify final assault. The letter from Tom Brennan, containing revelations about his expectations for their relationship, added emotional stakes that complicated their practical partnership with questions about authenticity of feelings that had developed under circumstances designed to produce predetermined outcomes. Their growing love would face ultimate test when external pressures forced them to choose between safety through separation and commitment that might cost them everything. As winter storms gave way to spring opportunities and Vance's threats intensified into open warfare, Eli and Abigail faced their ultimate test, a confrontation that would determine whether love born from duty could become strong enough to triumph over organized evil. The crisis erupted during the worst blizzard of the season when Cyrus Vance's men used the storm as cover to launch coordinated assault designed to destroy the ranch's infrastructure and eliminate any possibility of economic recovery. Their systematic approach cutting fences to scatter cattle, setting fires to consume feed supplies, and positioning shooters to prevent effective defense demonstrated planning that made resistance seem futile despite Eli and Abigail's determination to protect what they'd built. They're not just trying to drive us off, Eli observed grimly as they watched flames consume the barn that housed their most valuable equipment. They're making sure we can't rebuild anywhere else, sending message to other ranchers about what happens when people challenge Vance's authority. The tactical situation was desperate, but not hopeless. Vance's men had superior numbers and had chosen their timing to maximize confusion while minimizing their own exposure to return fire. But their arrogance had led them to underestimate both Eli's military experience and Abigail's capacity for strategic thinking under pressure. "The storm cuts both ways," Abigail pointed out as she positioned lanterns to create misleading shadows that would confuse attackers about their defensive positions. They can't see us clearly either, and they don't know this property the way we do. The running battle that followed through driving snow revealed skills that neither had fully demonstrated during their months of domestic partnership. Eli's combat experience from territorial conflicts, combined with Abigail's quick thinking and fearless execution of defensive plans, they improvised moment by moment, creating effective resistance despite overwhelming odds. But when the barn fire spread to threaten the house itself, they faced the choice between abandoning their home to save their lives or making the kind of desperate stand that might preserve their property while destroying their future together, if the flames claimed either of them. As the fire spread toward the main house and Vance's men tightened their circle to prevent escape, Eli and Abigail faced the choice that would define not just their immediate survival, but the nature of their partnership retreat to save themselves while losing everything they'd built, or risk everything in final gamble that might preserve their home while potentially costing them their lives. "We can run," Eli said, though his voice carried reluctance that revealed how much their shared efforts had come to mean to him. "Save ourselves and start over somewhere else. Hope Vance doesn't follow, or that we can build something he can't destroy." Abigail's response revealed how completely their arrangement had transformed from necessity into choice. "Or we can fight for what's ours, use the horse breeding contracts to rebuild bigger than before, prove that innovation and determination can triumph over intimidation and violence." Her plan was audacious, using their emergency fund to purchase the Morrison land immediately, establishing horse breeding operation that would be too valuable for territorial authorities to allow Vance to destroy, creating economic partnership with military that would provide protection their isolation couldn't guarantee. "It means risking everything on one gamble," Eli warned, though his tone suggested he was already convinced by her logic. "If we're wrong about the contracts, or if Vance has more political influence than we think, we'll lose not just the ranch, but any chance of starting over." The moment when they chose to fight rather than flee marked their complete transformation from reluctant partners fulfilling obligation into committed allies willing to stake their shared future on their ability to build something together that neither could achieve alone. The victory came not through superior firepower, but through superior knowledge and planning that revealed the strength of their partnership when tested by external pressure. Abigail's strategic use of lighting to confuse attackers, combined with Eli's tactical positioning that maximized their defensive advantages, created effective resistance that surprised Vance's men with its competence and coordination. The fire that had threatened to destroy everything became weapon in their hands, as Eli used controlled burns to create barriers that channeled attackers into positions where their superior numbers became liability rather than advantage. Most importantly, their coordination under pressure demonstrated trust that neither had expected to develop when agreeing to honor Tom's arrangement. The dawn that revealed Vance's retreat also brought Miguel's discovery of Tom Brennan's letter, revealing the depth of planning that had brought them together while confirming that their feelings for each other were authentic rather than manufactured. Tom's confession that he'd loved Abigail from afar but trusted Eli to love her better created emotional resolution that freed them to build relationship based on their own choices rather than obligation to dead man's wishes. But surviving Vance's assault was only the beginning. As dawn broke over their scarred but still standing ranch, Eli and Abigail faced the challenge of building a life together from the ashes of duty, the triumph of courage, and the revelation that love could indeed grow from the most unlikely seeds. The victory over Cyrus Vance's assault provided more than immediate relief. It demonstrated to territorial authorities that innovation and determination could indeed triumph over intimidation when supported by strategic thinking and genuine partnership. The bank's approval of their loan for the Morrison land, influenced by their success in defending their property and their detailed plans for military horse breeding contracts, provided economic foundation for building something larger than either had imagined when agreeing to honor Tom's dying request. Tom Brennan's letter, recovered from the burned barn and bearing water damage that made its discovery seem almost miraculous, revealed the depth of love that had motivated his matchmaking while confirming that the feelings developing between Eli and Abigail were authentic rather than obligation-driven. His confession that he'd trusted Eli to love Abigail better than he ever could created emotional freedom that allowed them to build relationship based on their own choices. He saw something in both of us that we couldn't see in ourselves. Abigail observed as they read Tom's words together by lamplight, not just that we'd be good for each other, but that we'd be brave enough to choose love when it required fighting for what we wanted to protect. The spring that brought new life to their expanded ranch also brought recognition that their marriage had evolved from duty into partnership worth defending against whatever challenges the future might bring. The weeks following their victory created atmosphere of hopeful anticipation as they planned expansion that would transform their defensive success into long-term prosperity while navigating the emotional revelation that their relationship was no longer about honoring Tom's memory, but about building something uniquely their own. The horse breeding operation they'd proposed required substantial investment and perfect execution to succeed, making every decision crucial to their shared future. Eli's obvious pride in Abigail's strategic thinking, combined with his determination to provide the kind of security that would enable her to flourish as partner rather than dependent, created emotional intimacy that had been missing from their carefully maintained professional arrangement. Her confidence in their ability to succeed together, based on evidence of their effectiveness under pressure, represented trust that neither had dared to offer anyone since experiencing losses that had taught them to expect disappointment. "We're not just rebuilding," she said, as they surveyed land that would soon accommodate expanded operations. "We're creating something that honors what Tom wanted for us, while proving that people who refuse to be intimidated can build something beautiful together." Their success would influence territorial policy toward protecting innovative ranchers while demonstrating that partnerships based on mutual respect could achieve what individual effort alone couldn't accomplish. The military contracts they secured for horse breeding provided not just economic stability, but official protection that made future attacks on their operation tantamount to interference with federal business interests. Their success in delivering quality animals on schedule impressed cavalry officers while establishing reputation that attracted additional contracts from other military installations throughout the territory. The breeding program they developed, combining Eli's knowledge of ranch operations with Abigail's organizational skills and educational background, created innovations that influenced territorial agricultural development while providing prosperity that exceeded anything either could have achieved independently. Their horses, trained using methods that emphasized intelligence over mere obedience, commanded premium prices while establishing standards that other breeders sought to emulate. The expanded ranch operations they managed together demonstrated practical benefits of partnerships that honored both traditional skills and modern innovations. Eli's experience with cattle management complemented Abigail's business acumen and strategic planning, creating enterprise that impressed neighboring ranchers while challenging assumptions about appropriate roles for women in frontier business. Most importantly, their economic success provided independence that enabled them to support other couples seeking to build unconventional partnerships, while proving that innovation and determination could triumph over intimidation when supported by genuine cooperation and mutual respect. The emotional transformation of their marriage from dutiful arrangement into genuine partnership proceeded with the same methodical care they'd applied to ranch operations, each stage building trust that supported deeper intimacy. Eli's decision to share memories of Mary's death, including his guilt over failing to save her, revealed vulnerability that Abigail honored with understanding rather than pity. Her reciprocal sharing about her father's financial failures and the social ostracism that had cost her teaching position in Boston created foundation of mutual knowledge that transcended their original arrangement to encompass genuine friendship. The physical attraction that had been building between them found natural expression in relationship now based on choice rather than obligation. Their wedding night, nearly 6 months after their actual ceremony, represented conscious decision to transform legal partnership into authentic marriage based on love they discovered through shared challenges and mutual support. The intimacy they shared honored both their individual healing and their commitment to building something together that was worthy of the courage they'd shown in defending it. I never thought I could love someone more than duty required, Eli admitted as they planned their genuine future together. Tom was right about us being good for each other, but he couldn't have known how much better we'd be together than either of us expected. Abigail's response captured the essence of what they'd discovered. We didn't just honor his memory, we created something he would have been proud to inspire, something that makes his sacrifice meaningful rather than just tragic. Their success influenced territorial development toward greater protection for innovative ranchers, while demonstrating that partnerships based on equality could achieve better outcomes than traditional hierarchical arrangements. The educational programs Abigail expanded, now serving children from multiple ranching families, created community resources that strengthened regional development while challenging assumptions about women's capabilities. The legal precedents established through their successful defense against Vance's criminal activities influenced territorial legislation that strengthened property rights, while creating frameworks for prosecuting organized criminal activities that crossed jurisdictional boundaries. Their case became cited in territorial courts as example of how individual courage could expose systematic corruption while protecting legitimate business interests. Federal officials documented their innovation in horse breeding as evidence that territorial development could proceed through cooperation rather than conflict, influencing national policy toward greater support for independent ranchers rather than consolidation under large corporate interests. Their correspondence with military officials influenced cavalry purchasing policies that rewarded quality over mere cost considerations. The annual gatherings they hosted brought together ranching families seeking alternatives to intimidation and conflict, creating community networks that strengthened mutual support while demonstrating practical benefits of cooperation over competition in territorial development. The ranch that had been Tom Brennan's dream became foundation for community that demonstrated how individual courage could transform entire regions when supported by innovative thinking and genuine partnership. Their success inspired similar efforts throughout the American West, while proving that families created through choice could be stronger than those limited by traditional expectations. The children they would raise grew up understanding that strength came from cooperation rather than domination, that security came from building rather than destroying, and that the greatest adventures came from creating something beautiful together, rather than competing for resources that scarcity made precious. The horse breeding techniques they developed became standard practices throughout territorial cavalry operations, while their business methods influenced ranching families seeking sustainable prosperity, rather than boom and bust cycles that characterized most frontier enterprises. The correspondence they maintained with couples throughout the territory created networks of mutual support that influenced territorial politics toward greater protection for innovative partnerships while respecting traditional values that promoted community welfare. The celebration of their first genuine anniversary, marked by the arrival of their first successful cavalry contract and the birth of their first child, demonstrated how completely their relationship had transformed from dutiful arrangement into authentic partnership that honored both Tom's memory and their own choices. Their obvious happiness attracted visitors from throughout the territory seeking proof that love could indeed grow from duty when nurtured with respect and protected with courage. Their success influenced territorial legislation that strengthened protections for innovative ranchers while creating legal frameworks that recognized partnerships based on mutual choice rather than economic necessity disguised as romantic arrangement. But their greatest legacy would be the proof that true partnership requires choosing each other daily, not just at the altar, and that the most beautiful love stories often begin with duty and evolve into devotion that transforms everything. Within 5 years of their marriage, the innovative ranching methods Eli and Abigail had pioneered spread throughout Wyoming territory, creating the first comprehensive framework for combining traditional cattle operations with specialized breeding programs that served military and civilian markets simultaneously. Federal authorities, initially skeptical of their unconventional partnership, eventually recognized that cooperative relationships produced better outcomes than competitive individual efforts in achieving both economic success and community stability. Their ranch became destination for couples seeking examples of successful marriages that honored both traditional values and modern innovations. while their business practices attracted attention from territorial officials studying sustainable economic development strategies. The legal precedents they'd established through their successful defense against organized criminal activities influenced territorial legislation that strengthened property rights, while creating frameworks for prosecuting criminal conspiracies. The educational programs Abigail developed influenced territorial policy toward greater emphasis on practical skills alongside academic learning, while their horse breeding innovations became standard practices for military procurement throughout the American West. Most importantly, their partnership provided living proof that marriages based on mutual respect could achieve both personal happiness and community benefit when supported by courage and innovative thinking. The Eli and Abigail Tucker Ranch remained a landmark of successful partnership for generations. Its story inspiring marriage counselors and business development specialists throughout American history. The precedents they'd established influenced family law toward greater recognition of partnerships based on mutual choice, while creating business frameworks that honored both traditional skills and innovative approaches to economic development. Their agricultural innovations, combining traditional ranching methods with specialized breeding programs and educational initiatives, influenced territorial economic policy while creating models that were adopted throughout the American West. The educational methods Abigail pioneered became templates for institutions that emphasized practical skills alongside academic achievement. The legal precedents established through their case influenced Supreme Court decisions about property rights, criminal conspiracy prosecution, and the relationship between individual innovation and community development that continued protecting independent business operators well into the modern era. Their successful resistance to organized criminal pressure became cited in federal courts throughout American legal history. Federal legislation protecting innovative ranchers and establishing frameworks for military procurement that rewarded quality over political connections was directly influenced by documentation of their success. International observers studying American approaches to territorial development cited their ranch as example of how individual courage could transform regional economics while maintaining community stability. Most significantly, their story influenced American understanding of marriage itself, demonstrating that the strongest unions were often those that evolved from duty into choice, from arrangement into authentic partnership based on shared values and mutual respect, rather than mere romantic attraction or economic convenience. Eli's journey from grief-stricken ranch foreman to devoted husband and successful business owner demonstrated that healing from profound loss was possible when channeled into service that honored both memory and hope. His willingness to risk everything for Abigail's protection revealed character that tragedy had tested but not destroyed. Abigail's evolution from displaced teacher to confident ranch partner and community leader proved that recovery from systematic rejection was achievable when supported by genuine partnership and opportunities to use personal experience for community benefit. Her success in maintaining individual identity while building shared life created models that influenced other women seeking authentic relationships. Together, they embodied the frontier ideal of transformation, people who created new identities based on chosen values rather than inherited circumstances, proving that duty could indeed evolve into devotion when nurtured with respect and protected with courage. True love often grows not from passion, but from partnership. Two people choosing daily to build something together that honors both their individual worth and their shared commitment to creating beauty from whatever circumstances life provides as raw materials for building lasting happiness together. Their legacy endures in every marriage that chooses growth over stagnation, partnership over possession, and the courage to evolve from duty into devotion when both partners possess the wisdom to see potential rather than problems in their shared circumstances. Eli Tucker's marriage to a woman he'd never met became proof that sometimes the most profound relationships begin not with romantic attraction, but with mutual commitment to honoring obligations that transform into opportunities for building something beautiful together. Their story reminds us that the best partnerships are often those where both people choose each other repeatedly, not just at the altar, but through every challenge that tests their commitment to building rather than merely surviving whatever circumstances have brought them together. The night Abigail stayed and fought beside Eli marked not the beginning of their physical relationship, but the moment when duty transformed into choice. Obligation became opportunity, and two people discovered that the most meaningful love stories are written not in moments of passion, but in daily decisions to stand together, when standing together requires more courage than either possessed alone. In the end, their ranch became more than property. It became proof that when authentic people choose to honor their commitments through action rather than mere sentiment, they can create partnerships strong enough to inspire others and transform entire communities willing to learn from their example of choosing love as daily decision rather than temporary emotion.